You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 23rd of September 2013. UK Muslim hate preacher Anjem Choudhury's 16-year-old daughter tweets a call for Islamic jihad in Syria. Hard-up RAF flies second-hand jets in the US Air Force colours to save £3 million cost of repainting them in British colours. Special Forces sniper who claimed SAS assassinated Diana by shining light into her driver's face has fled Britain. Careful what you say in France. A £1,400 fine for anti-Islam comment. 1.3 tonnes of cocaine inside 30 suitcases on Air France plane. Almost 5 million Italians are in poverty. Earth's temperature hasn't risen for the last 15 years. Russian patriarch to Obama, Syria's Christians nearing extermination. Thought for the day, unfair? You bet. And finally, the day of the Triffids. UK news. UK Muslim hate preacher Anjem Choudhury's 16-year-old daughter tweets a call for Islamic jihad in Syria. The teenager, who used the name Hediyag bint Anjem, echoed many of the terrorist views spouted by her father before her account was deleted. Hediyah Miraj tweeted, "The ultimate way to help Syria is not Muslim aid or temporary convoys, rather it is to take authority via jihad and implement Allah's law." Her profile, which featured a cartoon of a young masked Islamist, declared, "Islam is superior and will never be surpassed." Despite not using her full name on Twitter, Choudhury's daughter stated in one message that the fanatic is her father. She also tweeted a link to the now deleted Ask.fm account, which made their relationship clear. She sent a message to her dad after reading one of his postings. It said, "Anjem Choudhury, so true. May Allah bring Islam to Syria soon." One of her postings made plain her dislike of the London area where she lives. She lives in a state-funded home despite the fact that her father is a licensed attorney but refuses to practice law. Instead, he collects welfare benefits. She wrote, "Everywhere you look you see promiscuity and sexual exploitation in this kafir non-Muslim land. It's so hard to walk outside without feeling sick." Despite her views on Western life, Hediyah said that her favourite drink was Dr Pepper and she wore maroon Converse shoes. World at 8. It would be kinder to deport all the Choudhury family to a place they can relate to and not damage. Perhaps the moon. Hard-up RAF flies second-hand jets in US Air Force colours to save £3 million cost of repainting them in British colours. The RAF's new £650 million fleet of second-hand spy planes will fly in US colours because defence bosses say it's not cost-effective to repaint them. Instead of the Air Force's uniform light grey, the three RC-135 Rivet joint aircraft, which were brought from the US, will keep their design of a white top, black nose and grey underside. Repainting the aircraft would cost £3 million to pay for trials to ensure the paint did not interfere with computer surveillance technology. Only the RAF's blue, red, white and roundels will be added to the wings and fuselage of the aircraft. World at 8. Make parents pay for their children's lunches and put the £600 million into our armed forces. Problem solved. Special Forces sniper who claimed SAS assassinated Diana by shining light into her driver's face has fled Britain. The SAS soldier who made astonishing claims Princess Diana was murdered by Special Forces has apparently fled Britain just days before he's set to be questioned by police. The former sniper, known only as Soldier N, is said to have left the country as Scotland Yard launches a new investigation into the princess's death. He allegedly told his wife that a member of an elite unit shone a light in her chauffeur's face, causing him to crash in August 1997. The wife claimed her husband had told her the hit had been instructed by someone in the royal inner circle because they didn't approve of Diana's relationship with Fayed. Soldier N was due to meet Scotland Yard's DCI Philip Easton, but it is understood to have left the country on Monday or Tuesday. World at 8 states, that or he's finito. European news. Be careful what you say in France. A £1,400 fine for anti-Islam comment. A Frenchman has been unfairly punished for the non-crime of posting the following comment on the website of Le Figaro newspaper. As for the Muslims who are being more and more provocative to the indigenous French with their crap halal meals, I advise them to immediately stop these provocations or to leave France as quickly as possible and return to their Muslim countries if they don't know how to live in harmony with other religions. Otherwise they'll end up having the choice of la valise or la sociole, the suitcase or the coffin, as was the case for the Pédouins, French colonists in Algeria in the 1960s. For this comment he received a 1-month prison sentence, suspended, and a €1,680 fine for the anti-Islam comment on the newspaper website. 1.3 tonnes of cocaine inside 30 suitcases on Air France plane. There's a joke about high flying in here somewhere. Cops at Paris Charles de Gaulle Airport have found 1.3 tonnes of pure cocaine on an Air France jet. The coke was packed inside 30 suitcases on a flight from Venezuela and had a street value of about $270 million, the BBC reports. The bust was made earlier in September but was only announced by France's Interior Minister yesterday. He said it was the biggest drug haul in Paris's history and 6 people, 3 Britons and 3 Italians, had been arrested in relation to the find. 3 members of Venezuela's security forces were arrested in connection with the 1.3 tonnes of cocaine French police found aboard an Air France flight that originated in Caracas, a top cabinet minister said on Sunday. Almost 5 million Italians are in poverty. Over the past 5 years, the poverty rate in Italy has almost doubled, leaving nearly 1 in 10 Italians unable to afford the basics such as food and healthcare. Today, 4.81 million Italians live in absolute poverty, around 8% of the country's population, La Stampa reported. The figure has risen 99% since 2007, a reflection of the steep economic downturn which still looms over Italy. A study by Coldiretti, the agricultural workers' organisation, found that southern Italy has 2.35 million citizens in absolute poverty. This figure is markedly higher than central Italy's 684,000 citizens in poverty and the 1.78 million found in the north. However, Italians are falling into poverty faster in the traditionally more wealthy central and northern regions. As other European nations show sign of recovery from the economic crisis, Italy's revised budget could see the country's public deficit hit 3.1% in 2013. The unemployment rate stands at 12% and there's also been a rise in the number of businesses filing for bankruptcy in Italy. World news. Earth's temperature hasn't risen for the last 15 years. Scientists working on the most authoritative study on climate change were urged to cover up the fact that the world's temperature hasn't risen for the last 15 years, it's claimed. A leaked copy of a United Nations report compiled by hundreds of scientists shows politicians in Belgium, Germany, Hungary and the United States raise concerns about the final draft. Published next week, it is expected to address the fact that 1998 was the hottest year on record and world temperatures have not yet exceeded it, which scientists have so far struggled to explain. The report is the result of 6 years' work by UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, which is seen as the world authority on the extent of climate change and what is causing it, on which governments, including Britain's, base their green policies. Russian patriarch to Obama: Syria's Christians nearing extermination. Raymond Ibrahim rightly says that while many were fixated on Russian President Vladimir Putin's recent letter to the American people, another letter from another Russian leader, this one directly addressed to the US President, was missed. Russian Patriarch Kirill. On September the 10th, Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill issued a letter addressed to His Excellency Mr. Barack Obama, President, United States. Whether one wishes to interpret this communiqué as a product of politics or sincerity, it accurately highlights the plight of Syria's Christians, especially in the broader context of a larger civilisational struggle. Raymond Ibrahim reposted major portions of the letter below. Your Excellency, dear Mr. President, the tragic events in Syria have raised anxiety and caused pain in the Russian Orthodox Church. We receive information about the situation there not from the news reports but from living evidence coming to us from religious figures, ordinary believers and our compatriots living in that country. Syria today has become an arena of armed conflict. Engaging in it are foreign mercenaries and militants linked with international terrorist centres. We were deeply alarmed to learn about the plans of the US Army to strike the territory of Syria. Undoubtedly it will bring even greater sufferings to the Syrian people, first of all to the civilian population. Our special concern is for the fate of the Christian population of Syria, which in that case will come under the threat of total extermination or banishment. It has already happened in the regions of the country seized by militants. An attempt made by the armed groups of the Syrian opposition to seize the town of Maaloula, whose residents are predominantly Christians, has become a new confirmation of our concerns. The militants keep shelling the town to which ancient Christian monasteries are located, the sites of special veneration by the faithful all over the world. The Christian hierarchs of Aleppo, Metropolitans Paul and John Ibrahim have been held captive by militants since April 22. Nothing is known about their fate, despite the fact that a number of religious figures appeal to the leaders of their states to help release them. I'm deeply convinced that the countries which belong to the Christian civilization bear a special responsibility for the fate of Christians in the Middle East. The Russian Orthodox Church knows the price of human sufferings and losses, since in the 20th century our people survived 2 devastating world wars which claimed millions of lives and ruined many people's lives. We also regard as our own pain the pain and losses the American people suffered in the terrible terrorist attacks on the 11th of September 2001. World at 8 states. To the West's shame, Maaloula has fallen to the Islamists since the patriarch penned his message to His Excellency President Barack Hussein Obama of the United States. And our government still want to blame the President Bashar al-Assad and not the Islamic dogs of war. We have taken the rewriting of history to new boundaries previously saved for the end of any war. Terrorist released from Guantanamo Bay after convincing officials he was no longer a threat to the West is killed fighting for al-Qaeda in Syria. A former Guantanamo Bay prisoner who fought against British and US forces in Afghanistan has been killed while fighting for al-Qaeda in Syria. Mohammed al-Alami was released from the top security detention centre in 2006 after convincing officials that he was no longer a threat to the West. The 37-year-old, who spent 4 years in custody, claimed he confessed to being a terrorist only after being beaten and threatened with death. But it's now been revealed that he was killed last month while fighting for Al-Nusra Front, one of the most violent and ruthless Islamic groups in Syria. A video posted on YouTube last week showed a funeral in which Alami is praised by a rebel leader for enduring the prison of the Americans in Guantanamo, where he did not reform or change. The disclosure will further fuel concerns that Britain and the United States should not become embroiled in Syria's civil war, in which al-Qaeda affiliated groups are playing an increasingly prominent role, with hundreds of rebel fighters reportedly defecting to them. World at 8. This has come back to bite the backsides of Liberty, Amnesty and the UN, hasn't it? Thought for the day. Unfair? You bet. I'm about to go into the annals of being a grumpy old woman here, but I am absolutely livid. You may well ask why, and here is the reason. The headlines for the last few days, just about now being obliterated by the terrorist shootings in Kenya, was the missing schoolgirl Esme Smith. Now I live not far from Farnham, and it seems peopled by a load of middle-class types who think they've made it from Hampshire to Surrey together with a shift in the nose angle of 40 degrees. Farnham is, however, still an untouched haven of Englishness, which I love, but my husband, being American, cannot stand. What gets me is the blatant unfairness of the situation. This selfish young girl has waltzed off for 11 days, and the onus on the local and national police to find her has been eye-watering. Of course, Facebook and the social networking sites have been overworking, so to speak, and surprise, surprise, she wanders into a North London police station and is fussed over yet again. My point being, I know there is one law for the very rich and one law for the very poor, but somewhere in this country there's been a middle ground for many generations, that of the lower and upper middle classes, and even within these stratas there is discrimination from our police force. This is a headline which greeted me this morning on the web. Missing schoolgirl Esme Smith is found safe and well by police in London after she was spotted by a passer-by. Esme Smith went missing from her home in Farnham, Surrey 11 days ago. Told friends she was going to a party in Woking but was seen travelling to London. 14-year-old is now at a North London police station after being found. Police say extensive media coverage helped lead to her discovery. Passer-by recognised her and flagged down a nearby police car. The The police spokesman said a call was made to Surrey Police by the Metropolitan Police around 9:40 AM today to say that the 14-year-old who went missing on September the 12th was at a North London police station. Her safe return is thought to be a direct result of the media appeals, and the media and public are thanked for their assistance. More than 4,000 people had liked a Facebook page called Find Esme Smith, dedicated to raising awareness of the girl's disappearance. Now we come to the telling factor. Her father, Mark Smith, who works at NATO's Joint Warfare Centre in Stavanger, said he was worried sick about his teenage daughter. Mr Smith has been decorated for service in Afghanistan, the Gulf War and Northern Ireland, and he's been Commander of Medical Planning at the Norwegian base since March last year. And of course Esme is also a pupil at the All Hallows Catholic School in Farnham, which is hardly your round-the-corner second-rate mixed comp, is it? Now, if all the missing teenagers got this sort of publicity that Esme has garnered, it would be unrealistic to expect. But I know that although my lovely daughter attended a private school in Wokingham when 14, if she had gone missing and was lying in the process, the police would not have paid so much attention, even those many years ago. And why? Because I was classed as a single mother. Although divorced and widowed, there was no daddy who was part of NATO in our lives. And that is the only reason why young prats like Esme, who have important daddies, are important themselves. Well, at least to the public and the police. Frankly, when I read she deliberately misled her family, I couldn't have cared less where she ended up, or frankly who with or with whom. Now another point I have is that of region. Now I know that certain parts of Surrey are being enriched as we speak, but to my knowledge, apart from large areas of Buckinghamshire, Hampshire, Kent and Oxford, I don't know of any really heavily populated areas of Muslim sexual groomers in the south east. Most of the ones reported have either travelled from the Midlands and North or been in the above named counties. So although this awful practice is spreading, it isn't as endemic down south as our towns north of the Thames. But if Farnham had been near one of those communities, would the police have been as happy to publicise Esme's little trip away from home as they have not in many other cases of actual abduction, rape and more further north? I don't contribute towards the thinking that all pigs are equal, and frankly I don't think that all people should be treated as equal to each other. Many deserve better treatment and many deserve less than better. But I think in the case of missing young children there should be no difference of background, financial or professional status. A possible crime against a child should warrant an equal response in all cases if possible. We certainly in this country and with our national press have not seen the coverage that Esme warranted for the many missing female teenagers that ended up drugged, raped and put to work by foreign gangs, and the Muslim practice of sexual grooming and carrying back and forth of underage children from region to region, which can and has ended in murder. I can guarantee there has been no national coverage of the hundreds if not thousands of our non-Muslim girls and the fate that has been theirs. Well yes, there has been. Earlier this year Andrew Norfolk did a double-page spread that included all forms of sexual slavery and still avoided the obvious religion of most of the perpetrators, and then lately we had the Sikh girl and now the Muslim women's group claiming they suffer as well. Shame. The fact is that Esme has rated higher on the importance scale due to her father's influence, and although understandable, it just isn't right. The fact she thought so little of her family and friends, and indeed the local police, just to walk away for a good time without any form of communication is bad manners and bad breeding, and that's a fact. It is a fact that many of our poor little girls are classed as vulnerable and stupid, just as I was put in a section of society with a group of probably very nice but very feckless young women who had multicolour swap shops of kids and no standards whatsoever. We Brits have the habit of labelling our own, but are not allowed to label ethnic minorities or their habits. But by this labelling, the police and various authorities lessen their work and concentrate on the cases that will earn them goodie points and publicity. Thus the Esme debacle and Daddy from NATO. Another important point is that Esme hasn't, to public knowledge, been approached or groomed by any ethnic males, so the authorities were quite safe in advertising the fact she had voluntarily taken herself off to our capital city, without offending our Islamic communities especially, and incurring the wrath of the Northwest group of the CPS, Nazir Afzal OBE. That is, for the unimpressed Order of the British Empire, and we're handing them out to just anyone nowadays. If a few years ago the sexual grooming problem had been allowed to rear its ugly head and the Nationals had promoted the instances of underage children being reported missing, This epidemic of cultural diversity differences would not have been allowed to run for the many years it has done so. It is only recently the police in those most affected areas have begun groups of fuzz roaming the streets in their cars, reacting and searching for the missing children reported. Even then they just go along to the party houses, which are reported in some local papers as just residences, and take the girls away to their homes, give warnings, and that is that. The whole useless episodes to be repeated day after day and month after month. This being so, the actual crimes are never brought to public light. The fact that young Muslim boys are somehow able to obtain houses from their parents or relations in which to entertain underage female non-Muslims for their own tastes and for profit. The police don't seem to object to the drugs and drinks served to these mainly underage children or the reasons behind it, or rather are not allowed to do so because of keeping peace in that community on a manageable level. So now we have two distinct levels of caring in the community. That of slightly upper echelon Surrey, with all the publicity and social networking sites going overtime because it's probably a safe vanishing and a worthy one, and the mainly northern vanishings which are not safe to publicise or even find. And if found alive, no news time is ever spent on these poor forgotten children. Just the fact that they were from broken homes or spent their time giving blowjobs to Muslims for free chips in Blackpool. What do you expect? In my book, and that of my party, all missing children should be looked after, found, and the perpetrators, whatever their religion, punished, deported or both. There should be no dividing line either socially or professionally in finding lost children. Whether they be from the council care homes or the professional homes in Surrey or Cheshire, there should be no difference to the police or the CPS in the perpetrators of these crimes either. Whether black, white, Muslim or Christian, all are guilty until proven innocent. And the press and the media should recognise that fact at long last. Just remember Charlene Page and many others lost in the annals of time and memory. And finally, the day of the Triffids. British scientists believe they found small bugs from outer space in the Earth's atmosphere. Tiny organisms were discovered by the University of Sheffield experts on a research balloon they had sent 16.7 miles into the atmosphere during last month's Perseids meteor shower. This natural occurrence is a result of material falling down from the tail of Comet Swift-Tuttle, which last passed near the Earth in 1992. The microscopic bugs were detected when the balloon landed back on the ground in Wakefield, West Yorkshire. But the scientists insist the samples could not have been carried from the Earth's surface into the stratosphere, the second layer of our atmosphere, which stretches up to 31 miles from the ground. Strict tests were taken to avoid any contamination, they said. Professor Milton Wainwright, who led the team, said most people will assume that these biological particles must have drifted up to the stratosphere from Earth, but it's generally accepted that a particle of the size found cannot be lifted from Earth to heights of, for example, 27 kilometres. The only known exception is by a violent volcanic eruption, none of which occur within 3 years of the sampling trip, and we can only conclude that the biological entities originated from space. Our conclusion then is that life is continually arriving to Earth from space. Life is not restricted to this planet, and it almost certainly did not originate here. The findings are to be published in the Journal of Cosmology. This presenter says, although I'm open to facts, I do wonder why scientists always deny the God theory vehemently and still say we humans did not originate on Earth, when in fact, whether you are a religious person or not, we obviously did. Whether from aliens or lizards or whatever, I don't know. Personally, I think I descended from the pterodactyls because I've always felt an affinity for those huge flying reptiles. See, I'm balmy too. Of course, one of the small organisms found on a balloon looks just like Casper the Ghost, bless him. But the question here is, are the scientists keeping these bugs alive, and why? You've been listening to The World at 8. I am Lynn Mozart, and I wish you all a very good night. £600 million into our armed forces. Problem solved. Special Forces sniper who claimed SAS assassinated Diana by shining light into her driver's face has fled Britain. The SAS soldier who made astonishing claims Princess Diana was murdered by Special Forces has apparently fled Britain just days before he's set to be questioned by police. The former sniper, known only as Soldier N, is said to have left the country as Scotland Yard launches a new investigation into the princess's death. He allegedly told his wife that a member of an elite unit shone a light in her chauffeur's face, causing him to crash in August 1997. The wife claimed her husband had told her the hit had been instructed by someone in the royal inner circle because they didn't approve of Diana's relationship with Fayed. Soldier N was due to meet Scotland Yard's DCI Philip Easton, but it is understood to have left the country on Monday or Tuesday.
You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Monday the 23rd of September 2013. UK Muslim hate preacher Anjem Chowdhury's 16-year-old daughter tweets a call for Islamic Jihad in Syria. Hard-up RAF flies second-hand jets in the US Air Force colours to save £3 million cost of repainting them in British colours. Special Forces sniper who claimed SAS assassinated Diana by shining light into her driver's face has fled Britain. Careful what you say in France. A £1,400 fine for anti-Islam comment. Asked. Despite not using her full name on Twitter, Chowdhury's daughter stated in one message that the fanatic is her father. She also tweeted a link to the now deleted Ask.fm account which made their relationship clear. She sent a message to her dad after reading one of his postings. It said, "Anjem Chowdhury, so true. May Allah bring Islam to Syria soon." One of her postings made plain her dislike of the London area where she lives. She lives in a state-funded home despite the fact that her father is a licensed attorney but refuses to practice law. Instead, he collects welfare benefits. She wrote, "Everywhere you look you see promiscuity and sexual exploitation in this Kafra non-Muslim land. It's so hard to walk outside without feeling sick." Despite her views on Western life, Hediya said that her favourite drink was Dr Pepper and she wore maroon Converse shoes. World at 8. It would be kind of 1.3 tonnes of cocaine inside 30 suitcases on Air France plane. Almost 5 million Italians are in poverty. Earth's temperature hasn't risen for the last 15 years. Russian patriarch to Obama, Syria's Christians nearing extermination. Thought for the day, unfair? You bet. And finally, the day of the Triffids. UK News. UK Muslim hate preacher Anjem Chowdhury's 16-year-old daughter tweets a call for Islamic Jihad in Syria. The teenager, who used the name Hediya bint Anjem, echoed many of the terrorist views spouted by her father before her account was deleted. Hediya Miraj tweeted, "The ultimate way to help Syria is not Muslim aid or temporary convoys, rather it is to take authority via jihad and implement Allah's law." Her profile, which featured a cartoon of a young masked Islamist, declared, "Islam is superior and will never be supposed to deport all the Chowdhury family to a place they can relate to and not damage. Perhaps the moon." Hard-up RAF flies second-hand jets in US Air Force colours to save £3 million cost of repainting them in British colours. The RAF's new £650 million fleet of second-hand spy planes will fly in US colours because defence bosses say it's not cost-effective to repaint them. Instead of the Air Force's uniform light grey, the three RC-135 Rivet joint aircraft, which were brought from the US, will keep their design of a white top, black nose and grey underside. Repainting the aircraft will cost £3 million to pay for trials to ensure the paint did not interfere with computer surveillance technology. Only the RAF's blue, red, white and roundels will be added to the wings and fuselage of the aircraft. World at 8. Make parents pay for their children's lunches and put the